Did you know that of all the parables Jesus told, more than a third are about money? Not salvation, not healing, not miracles, money. Of 38 parables recorded in the Gospels, 16 have money as the central theme or main narrative element. Jesus talked about money more than heaven and hell combined, more than prayer, more than any other subject he touched during his 3-year ministry. This isn't coincidence, and it's one of the most ignored things about Jesus' teaching. Why would a man who said he had nowhere to lay his head, Luke 9 verse 58, spend so much time talking about finances? That's the question we're answering today, and the answer will change how you read the Gospels. Before diving into the reasons, it's worth making a quick list of some of Jesus' financial parables, not to list for listing's sake, but so you realize the volume and variety. The parable of the talents. A master distributes capital among 3 servants and demands a return. The parable of the workers in the vineyard. A landowner hires workers at different times and pays the same wage to everyone. The parable of the prodigal son. A son asks for his inheritance early, squanders everything, goes bankrupt spiritually and financially, and returns to his father. The parable of the shrewd manager. A fired administrator uses his master's resources to secure his future, and Jesus praises him for his shrewdness. The parable of the rich man and Lazarus. A rich man who feasts while a beggar begs at his gate die and have opposite destinations. The parable of the rich fool. A wealthy man decides to build bigger barns to store everything, and God calls him a fool that very night. The parable of the hidden treasure. A man sells everything he has to buy a field where treasure is hidden. The parable of the lost coin. A woman who loses a coin and turns the house upside down until she finds it. The parable of the 10 minas. A nobleman distributes capital equally among 10 servants before traveling and demands an account when he returns. Each of these parables uses money not as a secondary subject, but as the very vehicle of the spiritual message. Why? The first reason is the most obvious, and therefore the most ignored. Jesus talked about money because money is one of the most real things in people's lives. Jesus wasn't a philosopher distant from reality. He was a carpenter living in a society with taxes, debts, commerce, wages. He saw daily the weight money placed on people. He understood that most relationship conflicts have some financial component, that most human anxiety is tied to provision or lack of it. When Jesus wanted a spiritual truth to land in someone's heart, he used the language of real life. And money is one of the most universal languages of real life. Everyone understands what it's like to lose a coin. Everyone knows what it's like to receive a paycheck. Everyone has felt like the servant with 1 talent who didn't know what to do with it. Jesus used money as a language because everyone spoke that tongue. The second reason goes deeper, and it's the one that makes people most uncomfortable. Jesus knew that money is God's main competitor for the throne of the human heart. He didn't say this indirectly. He said it plainly in Luke 16 verse 13. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Mammon isn't an innocent word. In the ancient Middle Eastern world, Mammon was the name of a deity, the deity of wealth. Jesus isn't saying money is just a distraction or a concern. He's saying money has the capacity to occupy the place of a god in your life. And gods demand loyalty. They demand sacrifice. They demand you make decisions in their name. When someone lies to earn more, they're sacrificing their integrity on the altar of Mammon. When someone ignores their family for more work hours, they're making an offering on the altar of Mammon. When someone can't give because the fear of scarcity is greater than trust in God, Mammon is on the throne. Jesus talked so much about money because he knew that for most people, the main spiritual obstacle isn't intellectual atheism. It's divided loyalty between God and money. The third reason is the one nobody in the pulpit usually says. Jesus talked about money because it is an extraordinary revealer of a person's spiritual state. You can lie about your priorities. You can declare that God is first while acting as if work, security, and financial comfort were what really matters. But your bank statement doesn't lie. What you do with your money reveals with surgical precision what you really value, what you really trust, and whom you really serve. Jesus looked at the rich fool's barn and saw a man who had placed all his security in what could be taken in a single night. Luke 12 verse 20. You fool! This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Jesus looked at the widow with 2 small coins and saw the purest faith in the entire temple, greater than any rich person who dumped impressive amounts into the offering box. Luke 21 verse 3. This poor widow has put in more than all the others. Jesus looked at the rich young man and saw not a man of success, but a man in captivity, because money prevented him from following the calling his heart felt. Matthew 19 verse 22. When the young man heard this, he went away sad, because he had great wealth. Money reveals the heart. That's why Jesus used it so much. The 4th reason is practical and surprising. Jesus talked about money because it is the training ground for trusting God with bigger things. In Luke 16 verses 10 to 12, Jesus makes a connection that seems strange at first reading. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? Jesus is saying that your financial faithfulness is training for deeper spiritual things. That the way you handle money, whether you're honest, generous, a faithful steward, or dishonest, greedy, and careless, reveals and shapes your spiritual character in ways that later express themselves in other areas of life. There is no faith in the invisible without faithfulness in the visible. And money is the most visible of all the resources we have. The 5th reason is the most subversive, and the one Jesus probably wanted you to understand most. Jesus talked about money to subvert what the religious system of his time said about wealth. In first-century Jewish culture, wealth was widely seen as a sign of divine approval. The Pharisees taught that prosperity was proof of righteousness, that the rich were blessed because they were good, that the poor were poor because of sin or because their parents had sinned. Jesus turned this upside down. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5 verse 3. He healed the man born blind and explicitly denied that the blindness was the result of sin. John 9 verse 3. He praised the widow with 2 small coins above the rich. Luke 21. He was received with joy by Zacchaeus, the most hated tax collector in Jericho, and announced salvation to that house before Zacchaeus even changed his behavior. Luke 19 verse 9. Jesus used money to break the simple equation of rich equals blessing, poor equals curse, that dominated the religious thinking of his time. He showed that relationship with God isn't measured by bank balance, but by the state of the heart. And he knew that to do this convincingly, he needed to talk about money repeatedly in different ways with different examples so the message would penetrate a deeply entrenched belief system. So why did Jesus talk about money more than any other subject? Because money is universal, everyone understands. Because money is God's main competitor for the human heart. Because money reveals what we really value. Because financial faithfulness trains spiritual faith. And because money was the most effective language to subvert a religion that had confused wealth with righteousness. Jesus wasn't a prosperity preacher, but he also wasn't a poverty preacher. He was a spiritual physician who knew exactly where most of his patients had their hearts compromised, and used money as a stethoscope. If you read the Gospels and skip the parts about money thinking they weren't about you, you need to reread with different attention, because Jesus was talking directly to you. If this content opens something new in how you